Oh, hi. I hope you had a nice holiday so far. Christmas, Hanukkah is underway. I think we're about halfway through Hanukkah. You had a great Christmas. We got New Year's coming up. Luddy's here. What more could you ask for? John's here. No Sam. No Sean. Just us. Let's do the pregame show. Stars are back after the break right now. Don't be a Philadelphia Flyer when Cutter Gauthier is coming back. Well, maybe we'll talk about that in the postgame show. John Tortorella had some vintage I don't care kind of comments, which are very entertaining. But that's not what we're talking about right now because it is Stars. It is wild. We're back from the holiday break with the Dallas Stars pregame show. Craig Ludwig, our producer John Anderson, is back from much hijinks in the Northeast, and he's still here, although not smiling like he usually is because he is tired.
He's spent.
My entire body is dead right now, so I hope people appreciate the service I'm doing for you fans of a team that I'm not a fan of. So
we're going to try to do as little as of drops and other things for John as possible.
So don't say Joe Pavelski.
I mean, well, maybe he found a finger, so he's
Okay.
still there. We'll see how he goes in the postgame. Maybe you get your super chats going. Or get in the Discord, get in the chat for our YouTube broadcast tonight, and maybe see if you can cheer John up. Not that he's down in the dumps. He's just on empty. All right. Luds, speaking of which, Stars are back after the Christmas break, 3 days off, and I went to the dressing room this morning after the morning skate because they had an optional yesterday, and Pete DeBoer said, yeah, all the young guys went. He goes, as they should, and then and chuckled. But they had a first official mandatory skate this morning, and then, of course, the game tonight because they're not allowed to have a mandatory team activity for 3
Did they
days.
get full 30 minutes in this morning?
It was more than they've been, but I don't think it was a full half-hour skate.
Okay.
They did a little power play work, actually it was fun watching Maverick Bork win like 7 straight face-offs from jamiebenn. Just those little things you pick up. Jamie was laughing with him. They were having a good old time. And afterwards I went and said hi to a couple players, and Matt Duchesne and I started chatting, and he said, and then Jason Robertson sat down next to him because their stalls are next to each other. And Matt said that this is the part of the season from the end of Christmas break until the trade deadline where games can kind of drag. Not that you don't get up for certain games, but the dog days of the season could be in this stretch. And I thought that was particularly interesting because they said that the last 10 to 15 games, both Robertson and Duchesne agreed. So around Thanksgiving to Christmas, flew by. What's up with that?
Well, I think that's always like that. I think the first 15 to 20 seem to go pretty quick. It always depends on how you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It can drag along. But, yeah, you get into the holidays and you get just past the holidays, and it seems like the next thing you're not concerned with, but it's always in the back of is the trade deadline. You know, because you hear the whispers and things going on, teams that are doing good, teams that are doing bad, and you're always hearing things from around the league. And I think I know that for the groups I've always been with, we'd always look forward to like game 60 because game 60 is now you're going downhill and we're heading into playoffs. We're playing the first 60 games to get our game together and have it at the point where we were starting to feel good, putting little things in place and bigger things in place, and you're looking forward to the playoffs. And the last 20 games are to kind of fine tune those things that you're talking about so that when you drop the puck on game 83, you're where you want to be.
Duchesne had a really funny line, or not funny, but interesting, where he says, if you're playing well, the games fly by. You don't want it to stop. You don't want those breaks. If you're not playing well, you can't wait for one of those breaks. And he said he didn't feel like they were playing poorly, but they could use those 3 days mentally just to rest and reset. And Stars, again, with the Four Nations tournament coming up, with the trip to Finland, John, and all that condensed schedule, this is a tighter game schedule than typical for a regular 82-game season. They're going to have the same problem next year because of the Olympics. So for this year and next year, you're going to have that condensed, and that does add up quickly against players.
I think when the team is doing average to good, you kind of get through those times. When you're doing good to below average, it drags on a little bit. That's collectively. And then I think individually, when things are going well, like when you're talking to Matt Duchene, I would assume that he's pretty good because things are going well for him this year. If you were talking to Stankoven or Robo as far as scoring goals, it's like, Jesus, like there was already 30 games gone. I only got 50 games to go to get my numbers,
catch my points
to
up,
get
right?
my numbers right. Because again, I think for those kind of players, now you want to talk about the bottom 6 and the bottom 2 or 3 defensemen. You know, you're not worried about your numbers so much because you never get them anyways. You're just worried about how you're playing and how the team's playing.
Did you find that the holidays were good for your game, or were all those distractions a problem?
You know what? I think when I was playing, it really, I don't know. It just seemed like I didn't for sure. I never really got into the holidays where I got away from the game. You were always thinking about, regardless if you had 2 or 3 days off, you knew who the next. I could always tell you who my next game was against. I couldn't tell you who the second.
Yeah.
I never looked at. I don't look at the schedule like that. And you know, there were
not
times,
even when you had Montreal's coming in a week, or you're in Dallas or Minnesota, and you've just
especially teams you get traded away from. No, the hell with them. I don't want to go. You know, it's not. And again, I'm not that kind of player.
You weren't that guy. Some guys would circle and go, like for example, I was making the John Tortorella line. Cutter Gauthier with the Ducks going to be playing in Philly for the first time, and Gauthier said he has that date circled.
Why wouldn't those kind of players circle those dates? Because they can go out and do things. They can put points on the board that can say you made a mistake. I could never do anything like that, so I didn't care. I just didn't want to be -3.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to get scored against. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's all those kind of times. But again, I think it's where you are, what kind of player you are, how certain things affect you. And again, I was a little bit different. Other guys that were similar to me were the same way. I mean, we just kind of thought we had to worry about the next game. And, you know, and then there were times when, I'll tell you, Bob Gainey came in and when he was coach and before he became GN and things like that, he had this way of asking us, he'd bring us all in and he'd ask us, so, you know, here's who we're playing in a couple of days. Who's their leading scorer? And a couple guys on the ice would know that. He'd go, what did they do on their last 5 games on the power play? And we're like, what? Like, why would we need to know that? And what happened was he'd start calling out individual guys. Well, within 2 days, at the time, it was the newspaper was being passed around the locker room, and we were all looking at the team that we were going to play because we were going to get quizzed on it. We were going to get who scored their last 3 goals, who assisted on this goal.
Interesting.
But all he was doing is trying to get us engaged in the next game that we were going to play. He wanted
trying to
us
get you like
thinking
geared up about that team.
Well, just know who you're playing against and get you thinking. Again, not 72 hours in advance. Your next game, whether it was in the day, and this was typically at the morning skate of the game prior, like who's their guy or what did they do on their power play, and you know who are the guys that kill, who are the penalty killers, and then that was mainly for the power play guys, and kind of start running through your head. And you know, he had funny different ways of trying to get guys engaged in your next performance.
Some guys will have the 3-day break and stay because, like for me, I always felt it wasn't enough time. It wasn't worth battling crowds at the airport, worrying about delays or weather, all the things that can happen, especially in the wintertime. And especially when, you know, for example, in Dallas the other day, all those thunderstorms roll through, flights get delayed, you're trying to get somewhere, you don't have a lot of time there. Never felt worth it to me. A lot of the NHL guys who make a lot more money than I do, they would have the opportunity to say maybe charter a plane, or maybe we're going to head to Mexico for a day or 2, or maybe, you know, in Matt Duchene's case, he said he flew his family out to Utah. He stayed there after the game. He said originally wanted to go back what he calls home now because that's, you know, they have their place in Nashville. He goes, but I would have lost a whole day that way. And he said, well, you know, maybe, he goes, if I had done that, then I would have had to charter a flight back to Dallas to get here quickly enough so I didn't get delayed. He goes, that would have cost a ton. He goes, or maybe I could have chartered from Utah to Nashville. Either way, guys have different things they do. Some go places, some don't.
But you're not worried about the married guys as a coach.
That's right.
It's the single guys.
That's right.
And there were times, again, I'm going back in the time capsule, I would take Hatcher and Maffichuk with me to Wisconsin, and we go snowmobiling. coaches were worried, and they had a good reason to be worried. And came back with a couple black eyes a couple times too. So
ripping through trees.
well, I mean, you're not. Well, just he knows that it's not a family outing. You know what I mean? That's why when Duchesne wanted to stay in Utah for all the reasons, the family's there and stuff like that. You're fine. Have a good trip, and then he'll walk around and ask the single guy, "What are you doing? Where are you guys going? Are you going together? Or those kind of things. They
want to know what's going on.
Those are the things that worry you. And then as soon as you get back for your first skate, they'll be keeping an eye on you. They're not watching Matt Duchesne. They're watching the young guys.
That's my question, because 3 days is probably good for a mental reset, but it's probably not long enough for you to have a major physical one. If you need to rest, maybe a couple days off the ice is good. But this game coming back always seems a bit wonky, chaotic. You never know what you're going to get. The team traveling, Minnesota flew in this morning early, so they were here for a morning skate here, and you could debate whether it's better to fly in and get up early and do what they did, or skate at home, then travel like they do in preseason. I'm sure they don't want to do that where they miss their nap and their meal. They sort of get some of that routine. But what do you think the physical effects are for both of these teams, what they have to go through and play this game tonight after the break?
Well, this is different to me than a break where you go to Finland and some teams are just going through their normal schedule and you're playing them. The whole league was on break. So I think it's a little bit more even. I think you even look at that in the betting lines and you listen to people who they're going to take. They're like, we don't know what these teams did, So it could be a little sloppy the first 10, 15 minutes of the game, on both sides. And if you're not, you'll have an advantage.
Well, and that leads me into the next point, which is you have some numbers on these two teams and who has the lead. And how does this sloppy of a game affect both of these teams' records?
Yeah, this is probably not the good time to even talk about that. Well, one thing I know it's not a good time to talk about is because Kirill's not in the lineup tonight. So a lot of this doesn't even.
That's a big talking point.
Big bonus for Dallas. And you know what? You want to be careful from a coaching standpoint with your players when you find out that one of the top players, at least in the beginning is not going to be here tonight. Now all of a sudden, are they letting their guard down? Because now we don't have that guy. But I was just looking at some stuff like team scoring first away, the Wild. In other words, we're on the road. They're 9-0-1. The Stars at home are 5-3-0. A little different there, right? But then there's a couple other things. Leading at the end of the first period, the Wild, when they're on the road, they're 8-0. Dallas at home is 6-0. Leading at the end of the second period, Minnesota away, 10-0. Pretty damn good. Dallas at home, 9-0.
So they know how to hold down a lead, whether it's Dallas at home or Minnesota on the road.
Well, I can tell you when they're trailing. Okay, at the end of the first trailing, Minnesota this year, away, 1-3-1. Dallas at home is 2-3, right? I mean, and that's at home.
Not great comeback teams right now.
At the end of the second period, Minnesota was 0-2 when they're on the road. Dallas, this is the one for me, 0-5. At home when trailing at the end of 2.
And I want to add to that, Dallas is tied for 4th best in points at home. Minnesota is 1st in the league in road points. So the fact that they have such polarizing numbers when Minnesota's on the road and Dallas at home shows that even though this team has been stacked up with the other 32 teams, really good, Dallas at home, Minnesota on the road, if they don't have the lead, it's still hard to win.
It's so important. And then I even went back to last year just to see what their overall record, and this is through 82 games. Leading at the end of the second period for the Wild, on the road, they're 13-0-1. Dallas, 17-3-1 when they're at home.
They don't lose those leads very much.
They don't. And again, I think a lot of that comes down to goaltending. This could be a goaltending battle tonight, or because it's a holiday, maybe it's not going to be a goaltending battle. But for Jake, I'm sure he hopes it is. But I think what helps with those numbers is goaltenders like to play with the lead too. They like to know that they get a little insurance. The pressure's not on them as much. And so I think that their goaltenders kind of dig in a little bit. And they both have goaltenders that are playing great right now.
All right, let's talk about Kaprizov because you brought him up, and he is a huge talking point in this hockey game. He did not travel with Minnesota today. He is their leading scorer. He is a huge hole in the lineup being out. 50 points in 34 games. But what really stands out to me, Luds, is how many goals he has in the last chunk. He was one of the top assist guys when they met in November. Since then, not a ton of assists. He's all about scoring goals right now. Why is he so important to this team?
Go back to the last 20 games and to this point, I think it's 43 goals in 55 games. Jeez. He's on like a 65, goal streak in a regular season. Why is he important? Well, because of what he does. I mean, and I think that it's kind of who he's playing with too. I think him and Zook kind of have a really good little.
And Zuccarello is a prototypical playmaker. He's a setup guy.
Yeah, and I think that, and it's not just the goal scoring for Kaprizov. He makes plays. I mean, he makes passes that if you're playing with him, some of the things that he does with the puck, they're unexpected. And I think now that he has that steady diet of a line. I think that they know how to play with him. Maybe no different than what we talk about Marchment, Duchesne, and Sagan. We were just talking about before the show started. Like, they have this thing that they know where each other's going to be. They know the tendencies. They know where Tyler likes to know, and Tyler does know where Matt Duchesne wants to be with the puck, and vice versa. And they read off each other really well. And I think that the chemistry for Minnesota for that, especially with him gone tonight, is not going to be there. So they're not going to be as deadly tonight. And I think they know they're not going to be. And so what it tells me about that group, however they get the message across, is we may not score 4 goals tonight. We may be that team that every time we play against Dallas, we score 2 or 3 goals and that's it. So we may have to play a tight game. We got to keep things out of our end. And we knew our goaltender is generally going to make some tough saves for us.
Well, we're going to talk about the Stars lineup in a minute, but here's what the Minnesota Wild, we're going to do it backwards today. We're going to show the opponent first. So here's without Kirill Kaprizov in, but there's also another notable omission, Luds, and it's Joel Eriksson Ek, as he has missed 10 games due to injury, and that's their top 2 guys down the middle.
It seems like he's been getting close for 2 weeks, and he's getting close and getting close. It's almost like with Austin Matthews in Toronto. He comes back, and then he's kind of close, and then he goes back out of the line. Yeah, there's just that nagging kind of thing. When I look at this thing here, and this is, unfortunately, we can talk about this again, because this lineup right here is on the board in their room, right? What you're worried about is your players are looking at that board, and we're going to talk about it, but we don't want them thinking about it. I don't see they have to play a certain kind of game with this lineup here. Boldy, yes, great, having a great year.
You don't see an outright top line here?
I don't see one. I see a bunch of second and third line guys. That's what I see, and maybe a little bit below that. And I don't mean to discredit Boldy and Zuccarello because they're great players. Rossi's a good player. I think their back end is really good. And I think their decor is good. And I think when you look at the back end, Brodin and Favorite are great.
And Brodin was hurt the last time these two teams met. So getting him back, they do have Jake Middleton out, though, as he's been injured now for 6 games and counting. I know he's not a top pair defenseman, but he's a big guy.
But it's a little easier playing in their zone when he's not out there on the ice because you know that when he is there, you better have your head up. And if you're going to go in the corners or along the wall, you're probably going to get hit. So Spurgeon, I love Spurgeon. I think, and he's wearing the C now, right? I think he is on that team. I just love that small stature guy, but plays hard, gets up and down the ice. Faber's going to be up in the offensive zone. Brodin, one of the best one. You're going to see Brodin probably match up as much as they can, whether they have him against Hintz or Duchesne, whoever it's going to be, top line guy. So, and then Gustafsson is having an incredible year. So I just look at this team kind of playing a stingy kind of team, trying to take advantage of any scoring chances that they do get tonight. But I think the one thing you want to be careful of, I don't worry about a 1-goal lead. I would be concerned if they get a 2-goal lead tonight because they have ways that they can kind of shut it down and play a certain kind of Minnesota-style game that we've seen over the years.
All right, let's take a look at the Stars because the big talking point for me this morning was that Colin Blackwell is going to play with Duchesne and Marchment. Now, we saw this for the second and third periods on Monday, their last game before the break in Utah. And when I was talking with Duchesne, he unprompted said, said, Blackwell, we're playing with him and let's see what we can do with him. One of the things, Luds, that there's a whole bunch here because obviously we didn't see line rushes this morning. So the warm-up, which will happen in maybe 5 to 10 minutes, maybe there's some tweaks, but pretty positive we're going to see Marchment, Duchesne, and Blackwell. Blackwell getting a shot. They've been rotating right wings up and down their lineup for 33 games.
They're still looking for a solution for Tyler being out of the lineup. Yep. They still haven't found it. And, and Logan hasn't been on fire. And Logan, again, we've talked about this also quite a bit. He's a different kind of player than a Tyler Seguin playing there. And the one thing about Blackwell is he can play a little east-west. He can hang on to the puck. He makes some nice little plays. And I think one thing that they know for sure, being Marchment and Duchesne, he can be a guy that can be the first guy back into his own zone for the most part. He can be that conscience when it comes to making sure that there's not a lot of outnumbered rushes going the other way. And I think he's got some pretty good hands around that. We've seen that. It's funny. Look at how this how he has climbed up the lineup here since being scratched for what, 4 games or
He
5
was-
games, whatever it
yeah,
was.
regularly at the start of the year. I can pull it up, but
But he sat out like 4 or 5 games in a
He
row,
did.
right?
and if you look at what his start of the season was, right, he was in for a bunch, right? Again, they had some guys that they didn't have in the lineup. Oscar Beck got scratched quite a bit early. And then from the minute, believe it or not, he was scratched for the Minnesota game. It was 5 straight games where he was out of the lineup. And then, of course, since Sagan they haven't had the extra forward. But something that Duchesne told me that we talked about a week or two ago about missing Sagan and trying to play those quick. He says not only is he so good at the 10-foot pass, but he also said we miss Tyler's finishing on our line because he's a shooter.
Well, and Blackwell's been finishing lately, and we saw the nice goal, right? There was a 2-on-1. He takes the shot. It goes upstairs. Short
Nice
side.
finish.
That beautiful finish. But where is he generally scoring goals?
Front of the net, in the crease.
In the blue paint.
Yeah.
So I think that, is there really a big difference between him and Logan? Yeah, there is. Logan hasn't scored in 15, 16 games or something like that.
16 games, 0 goals, 3 assists.
And what I would suspect tonight, you're not going to know that Stankoven is playing on a different line. He's going to play the very same way. And it may play in better to those 2 guys that he's playing with, because those 2 guys, being Steele and Beck, are kind of straight line guys. And so you got a 3-man attack, kind of everybody on the same page. And when Logan was playing with Marchment and Duchesne, they're a little bit more east-west. And if anything, we've seen from Blackwell when he gets up and going, you can see him move to the left, right, or more. Even when Logan plays with them or whoever it was, it's more of a straight line kind of guy. So maybe this adds a little bit more swerve to their game. They're kind of a team or a pair. There's a little bit more east-west in their game, and I think that's how they were having so much success when Tyler was over there.
You've been saying this for a couple of months now, but Duchesne was very, very honest and open when he said, we're not as deep of a 3-line team as we were last year because of Joe, Ding, and Tyler. And that's something that Pete said, hey, 60-something goals out of your lineup because of that. Well, the line rushes are in, and it's exactly what we thought, right? Bork on the top line, if you want to call it top line, with Robertson and Hintz, Blackwell with Duchesne and Marchment. And then this is the big one for me, is Dodonov in that spot where Stankoven has been. We've seen Stankoven play well with Johnston and Benn. Why do you think that, remember, before Stankoven and before Dodonov got hurt last year, he was playing on that line and they had a lot of success. Are they just trying to keep moving things around until they see something stick?
I think that, again, you're trying to get as close to those 3 lines as you can. You'd like to see Bork start putting the puck in the net right now. And I think Dodonov, because Stankoven is not putting the puck in the net right now, Dodonov gives you a little bit more swagger, and he's got a little more creativity, and he shoots pucks well. We've seen the thing. We've talked about him since he's gotten here. He's that utility knife. He can play on any line. He doesn't change his game. He plays the way, and he also plays the right way. I mean, there's times where you're not going to see him get caught down low, and he's got this little tricky stuff we've seen, and so maybe they're trying to get close now and get. Let's take our top 9 guys that we think can put the puck in the net right now, and it's not Logan right now. Blackwell's been doing it down on the 4th line. It'll be interesting to see if the evens are allocated pretty much all the way 4 through, or are they going to ride the top 3 a little bit more tonight?
Just looked at the scores because I was trying to see if Minnesota had put out their lines yet, and all of a sudden people are making comments about the Blackhawks. The Sabres have a 3-0 lead already in the first period at home against Chicago.
Really?
How about that?
Remember, we were just talking about that.
Tomahawk City.
And Detroit, with their new head coach, Todd McClellan, already down 2-0 at home against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
The dead
Maybe not
cat,
so surprised.
The dead cat bounce isn't quite there yet.
Not quite there yet,
Not
but
there.
it could change. Couple more things for you, Luds, before we get to the end of our pregame show. Logan Stankoven and the scoring drought. How do you get him out of this? Because,
This might be the perfect way.
Why?
Because the other 2 guys play in straight lines also, because they're going to go to the net. Logan's got to get a couple ugly goals somehow. And I think when he plays with Duchesne and Marchment, I don't know if those guys, when he has the puck, are those guys in front of the net taking the eyes away from the goaltender as much as these other 2 guys
Right.
are. Maybe not him being at the net and being able to beat a goalie that can see the shot. He gets a couple ugly goals, and maybe there's a screen that's set by one of those other 2 guys. You just got to find a way to get him going. The best thing, not best thing, but it'd be nice for these guys to have a lead tonight and have Minnesota pulling their goalie and get Stankoven out there. Find a way to get that goal, even if
he
it's
hasn't
an empty
gotten
netter.
one some other way.
Yeah, if he hasn't gotten it yet.
Well, the goalie for the Minnesota Wild, Philip Gustafson, has been really, really good this season, as you already intimated. He's currently tied for 5th in the league in wins with 15. He's 4th in goals against, and he's 3rd in save percentage. His save percentage is .921. His goals against is .228. Stars beat him, but they only put a couple on him. He's just having a phenomenal start to the season.
And this is the same mentality when you have a goaltender playing that well. He's stopping a lot of those chances, and so you got to get to the high danger area, especially if you don't have the puck. Keep him in his crease and try to take his eyes away from him. You know, all the stuff that we're talking about right now, and you brought up Joe and you brought up Tyler. So let's talk about what we haven't talked about yet. Those are 2 big reasons, and it's not Spotter that's the reason. It's missing those 2 guys on the power play.
That's my next topic.
Okay,
so
let's go because I knew it was going to come up at some point.
Well, the Stars' power play has been dreadful, right? The numbers right now, they're 2 for 27. That's 7.4% in their last 8 games. They have been in a rut, but I did see our friend Robert Tiffin, who covers the Stars and has been on our show, member from Finland, had some interesting numbers that recently they're a top 3 team in high danger power play chances and goals for expected, but it's not going in. Why?
Well, because they're again, I go back to what the coach said a couple of games ago to our little buddy there, Sam, in vacation in California right now, laying on a beach apparently. That's an ugly thought, but he said no, we're going to start scoring, and I think and I agree, you're going to start scoring, but you're not right now. And when the rest of the team hears those comments, especially the guys that aren't scoring, we're going to start scoring. Well, get your asses into an area where you can start getting some ugly goals. And if we're standing on the perimeter all the time and they're not going in, maybe you got to get a little bit closer and you got to get a couple ugly goals. So
maybe some seconds.
That would be nice. I mean, a second
or third chance
opportunities. And again, it's not. Yes, they can score. They can score from the mid-range area. They can score from the high danger, but they're not right now. And so you got to get a little bit uglier because, again, when we did this little video, how many times I paused it and I look and everybody's on the outside waiting for a pass to come across or even expecting whoever it was, let's say they're taking a quality shot, that it's going in the net. Well, it's not going in the net. So instead of staying out there expecting to go in the net, get over there because there's probably some kind of a rebound or something laying around. Let's get some ugly goals and get feeling good about yourselves. And I don't think we have to worry about them starting to score or going to be a team that gets back on the horse on the power play. But let's start it now. We talk about let's not be trying to turn the light switch on at game 60 and say, well, we've got 20 games to go before we start the playoffs, and we need our special teams to be in order.
What really strikes me, though, is when you compare the Stars' struggles on the power play is the opposite of their penalty kill. 16 for 60 in their last 7. They are at 93% in their last 11, and they're at 84.9 for the season, which
I can keep it easy for you.
Yeah.
There's 4 guys on the penalty kill, right? Mm-hmm. They're out working the other 5.
Yep.
On the power play, it's the other 4 that are working out the 5 wearing the other jerseys. The 5 on the power play have to start outworking the 4. And that's what happens on the penalty kill. They pay the price to block the shots. You're getting the timely save when you need it, obviously. But they're doing all the little things that make it difficult for the power play guys to get to the areas that they want to ultimately get to. You take the good areas of the ice away. You force them to go to a little less higher danger area to shoot the puck. You got your goaltender that comes out and makes a save. So, again, I just look at, the other thing that we talked about on the power play last week was there's battles in the offensive zone and there's battles on the wall that they're not winning power play to get the puck back. Well, the penalty killers are getting those pucks and they're getting down the ice.
Well, this is the fun thing for them to face tonight because the Minnesota Wild are a really good team, right? They are second in the division at 46 points, but they've played a couple more games than the Stars do. Their penalty kill is god-awful. They are at 50%, 13 of 26 in their last 9 games, and that includes their win over Chicago right before the break where they didn't have a power play against. So they have been just atrocious. They have given up a power play goal, Luds, in 13 of their last 18 games, and the power play has been awful too. They had a huge start to the year where they scored 8 times in their first 8 games. They were operating at 30%. Since then, they're the third worst, 30th out of 32 teams with a power play of 12%. So they can't score on the power play. They can't defend on the penalty kill. How are they winning hockey games?
Well, they were winning it because of Kaprizov, and he's not there tonight.
And suddenly they lost 4 in a row, and they are 3-6 in their last 9. So they have gone through a bit of a tailspin right now.
Well, and I think, let's be honest, I don't think that everybody was going, this is a team that's going to finish in the top 2 in the West here. Or maybe even on this.
You think
division.
this is a bit of a return to the bubble being burst?
I think they're kind of coming back. They're going to be a playoff team more than likely, but I think they're coming back to where they are. We kept on saying, man, this is the last year of playing with the handcuffs on as far as money goes, and they can start going and get some players next year.
They're going to be a problem next year, I think.
Well, the big problem may be having to give Kaprizov about $14 million a year.
But then at least they can keep who else they have. But here's the thing: they're the best road team in the league. They're tied for 18th at home. They're just not a great home team. And I just sit there, Luds, and tell me if you think this is completely off base. They have a phenomenal goaltender, pretty good tandem having Marc-Andre Fleury as their backup. They 5-on-5 defend pretty well. And you saw they have a pretty balanced group. They don't, other than Kaprizov, have a lot. So you go on the road, you play a simple game, you defend well, you win a lot of hockey games. But they have not done so at home.
What's that stat? Goals above expected.
Yeah.
Were they scoring more goals than they probably were expected to? And again, I think this is the kind of time when you start getting right around that 40, 45 game mark, you kind of start to either come back to who you are or kind of go back, start elevating to who you haven't been, but you are.
And Pete Bohr said this morning, he said to his players as they met today, this is the time where we need to grab it and go, because they don't want to be stuck in the muck of, are they in or are they out? They're in the second wild card after the win Monday over Utah. Mm-hmm. He said, now's the time for us to go on a run.
Yeah, and
obviously.
I think we all have very high expectations coming off of last year. But again, different decor. 2 guys out of the lineup, 2 key guys out of the lineup. Yep. So
hard to replace guys.
And young guys in the lineup. And, so there's a different kind of group here. Yeah, you got the same goaltender. Yeah, you got Miro, and you got, the Duchesne and Marchman's having a hell of a year. But it's a different group. The power play, I don't know if the power play is ever going to be as good as it was last year the rest of this year. Hopefully it will be when Seguin gets back and they get that group back on there. Maybe that's all it's going to take. But I think we kind of have to live with, this isn't exactly the same team that we had last year, and let's just be honest about it.
Last thing for us as we get ready to head out to the start of the game, here's the decor for the Stars. No changes. Liam Bichsel, who was sent down right before the Christmas break, called right back up. Jake Oettinger gets the start after a really good game by Casey DeSmith in Salt Lake City. And Matt Dumba, wearing that full face shield, did participate in full, but we didn't get any updates. Nobody asked either. Because frankly, right now, Luds, this is the 6 that they want to go with.
This, to me, I look at Bichsel down there. This could be the kind of game it brings out who he is as a player, because there's a little more pushback from this Minnesota team, and they play a little more in your face, and they finish their checks a little bit more. Now, and again, they got guys like Hartman, they can kind of get in there and stir the pot. So this may be a good, maybe we'll see a little bit out of Bichsel and see how he can push back if it turns into that kind of game.
Well, they still have a trip to Chicago on Sunday, and then a week of home games next week as we go in and out of New Year's Eve and a couple of games after that, before they have to go east for an extended road trip. So can the Stars continue to bank points at home as they try to get themselves back into a division spot, which they can do tonight depending on how other things go with Colorado? We'll find out. And thank you for watching our pregame show. For John and Luds, I will be here. He will be here. John will be here for the postgame. Those other 2 knuckleheads, not tonight. We'll see you after the game.
I believe that they are going to crush these guys.
We all silly like the mayor.